good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are located. And a warm welcome to our IPMA UCL Megaproject CEO series. I'm Giuliano Denico, the global head of our Megaproject SIG at IPMA, and also the director of the Megaproject Delivery Center at UCL. So this series is part of our scientific exploration of leadership and management practices as part of the IPMA SIG, of course, to more than 70 countries, and in partnership with University College London to advance infrastructure delivery. And I do know that we have a large audience today from our MBA in major infrastructure delivery here with us. It's a pleasure to welcome today Jean-François Monteils, the chairman of the board of Société The Megaproject, to take us on a journey exploring the Grand Paris Express, which is an outstanding mega project set to transform mobility in Paris. Right, before handing over to Jean-François, a few house rules for questions here. We have a large audience with us today, so we're not operating the chat function. So please use the Q&A function to send all your questions to us during Jean-François' presentation. We will come back to the questions after his presentation. Okay, without any further ado, Jean-François, thanks very much indeed for joining us today for your global keynote, and over to you. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Giuliano. It's a pleasure for me. So I'm Jean-François Monteils. I'm the CEO. I have been the CEO for 4 years of the Société du Grand Paris, which is now Société des Grands Projets. I'm gonna give some explanations about this transformation. And once more, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you during this hour. And I hope we can have a fine exchange in spite of my poor English. So perhaps I start with some short presentation of the mega project of the Grand Paris Express. Just to explain, the Société des Grands Projets is the company which has been built to deliver this mega project of Grand Paris Express. So some elements of context about mobility solutions in France. We have, like a lot of developed countries, big problems about the question of transportation, especially in huge megalopolis. I think about Paris and this area, but also in other parts of France. I'm gonna speak about it in a few moments. So the fact is common. You know that in other countries, a lot of short distance trips are made with personal cars. We have not enough people using common transportation, and we have a lot of things to develop about that. Because it's not only a question of sustainable development, but it's also a big question of sustainable development. In France, the greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector in 31%. And the main origin of these emissions are in personal cars. So we have a lot of public policies to transform that. For example, the electrifying of the cars, but also all what we try to do for developing the public transportation. That's the aim of this big project of Grand Paris Express at the origin, but that's not the only one. We have also a huge question of social balance, social development. As you are going to see in a few minutes, the original philosophy of the Grand Paris Express, it's also to make links between different parts of the area of Great Paris, because the balance is not existing between the poor parts and the rich parts, if I speak very quickly. So what is the Grand Paris Express? Perhaps I begin with the chronology. It starts with a bill, a law in 2010, which is following a lot of projects which the different parts in charge were not able to combine, and you had into 2007, for example, or before that, some ideas of developing some lines of public transportations. Some of them were given by the local authorities, the town, the region, or the departments, as we say in France. Some others were coming from the state. But at the end, in 2010, what is the most important thing is the fact that the state, the central state, says we have to mix all these projects to do just one of all of them, and to build a big project with all these different lines that everybody is saying we need. So the law in 2010, the public debate about the project, coming to the important moment of the map of the new network, the new network of the Grand Paris Express in 2011. And from this moment, the law in 2010 had created the Société du Grand Paris. That was the name at this moment. And this company started from 2010 and began the building, the conception and the building of the network. So we had, I try to go as fast as possible. We had a lot of consultation of public, not only the consultation which are compulsory by the law, but naturally this one at first, but also a lot of exchanges with the population, with the local authorities, etc., etc. I can say that the concrete work started around 2015. The first tunnel boring machines started their work almost in this time, and since 2015, we are boring the Parisian soil and making all this line. How is the network and what is this new offer? This is the new network, which, as you can see, is a circular line. Not only one, but the first one is what we call the 15 line around Paris. So we have at first this idea of completing the radial network existing in Paris with this circular one, which is an underground metro, very deep in some part of the territory, automatic, without driver, and high performance. That means that it can drive until in French that should be 110 kilometers per hour. I don't know what it means in miles per hour. Sorry. The average speed will be 60 kilometers per hour. And to make the comparison with the existing network, it means that we have, for example, for the existing Parisian metropolitan, average speed, which is less than 20 kilometers per hour, I think, something like that. And the Réseau Express Régional, RER, which is completing the historical metro, is around 30 kilometers per hour. So we double the speed, and we double also the network. The historical metro is just less than 200 kilometers, and this new one, these 4 new lines, are 2,000 kilometers more. So these are the figures. It means I told you 200 kilometers of new lines. The average speed I told you. 68 new stations, that's very important. it means that we expect nearly 3 million passengers per day when the network is completely achieved. And what is also very important are two things. The first one is that 100% is accessible. And the second one is that 80% of our stations are in connection with existing network. That means that we are building a circular line, but this line is connecting the radial network everywhere. It is what you have in these slides. The existing network is radial, and we add the new network to connect all the stations around Paris. This has not only functional meaning, but also, as I told you just before, what I could express as sociological or political meaning or philosophy. In the law, in the bill of 2010, we had this expression that the Grand Paris is a urban project based on a new network. So the idea of recreate a more clever sociological balance between east and west of Paris, for example, is very strong at the beginning of the project. Some slide figures about or maps about the results of the accessibility and the improvement provoked by the new network. Well, I don't comment, but for example, we are connecting the two main airports in Paris, the three main airports, I should say, because Le Bourget also is concerned. We have Charles de Gaulle, Roissy-Charles de Gaulle on the north, Orly on the south, and we took these two examples to show how around the airport, the people who are able to connect with the airport within 45 minutes are multiplied by a high factor. What is the commissioning of the network? We have already started, because I spoke about the new network and the circular lines, which are the 4 new lines, 15, 16, 17, and 18. But we started with the extension of the 14 line, which is well known by the Parisians because it is one of the first completely automatic lines, which is absolutely appreciated because of that, in particular by Parisians, and which had to be extended to the north and to the south. To the south and to Orly Airport, and to the north to the very important station of Saint-Nicolas. We talked about Saint-Nicolas with Giuliano just before the starting of this meeting. And this station will be the new hub of the Parisian transportation network, with the 14, 15, 16, and 17 lines, and some others existing already not far from it. It was very important to achieve the extension of the 14 line because it was an important development for the transportation for the Olympic Games just last year. So we managed with our friends of other companies working on it. We managed to deliver that just in time for the Olympic Games. Next meeting with the public, if I should say so, 2026, the first brand new line, which is the 15 South, will be delivered with that is 35 kilometers of new line, 16 stations, sorry, at the end of the 2026 year. And 6 months later, the 17 and 16 line will have the first part of it, which is delivered on the middle of the 27 year. We have also the 18th line, which is in the south of Paris, starting from Orly and going to Versailles, of which the first part will be also delivered or commissioned in 26. So starting from end 26, we delivered the whole network until 2031. That means then that in around 6 years, we will deliver 200 new kilometers, new lines around Paris. I just go very fast about that. I told you some of the benefits for the region, for the accessibility, for the improvement in the time for the transportation and so on. You have all that on this slide, and we can come back to it if you like. Important point, which is dealing at the same time with the question of what we want to do, the philosophy of the network from a sociological or political point of view, and what we have to do as the company who is in charge. Each one of our station is built and designed, by a very well-known architect. We made how do you call concours? Competition, international competition for each one of our stations. I spoke about Saint-Denis-Pleyel, the most important station, which was made by a very famous Japanese architect. But we have that on each one of our stations. And the choice which was made 10 years, 12 years ago was to have each station different. That's the complete contrary of the existing Metropolitan, which has no station emerging on the ground. For the Grand Paris Express, that will be the contrary. Each station is emerging from the ground, so is visible. We will have some functions and will be the start of urban development. That's the point. And to achieve that, it was, I think it was not me, but I think it was very clever to imagine to give each station an architectural signature, which makes that everybody is proud of the station which is in his own town. These are, yes, about 65 different towns for each one of the station. And that the life is going to be organized around the new station and the new network. So some words about the company, the Société des Grands Projets. As I told you, we were built to design and to build the infrastructure, and at first to build the Grand Paris Express network. So what is important to say now is the fact that I joined the company 4 years ago, and as all the previous CEO of the company, I understood very quickly that at the end of the project in 2031, that would be a pity to let the competence, the experience, and the solutions and all what had been created by the Société des Grands Paris to disappear after the project. And in spite of the fact that we had a lot of needs of this experience and this competence for other projects. So we made we built the idea of extending the competence of the Société des Grands Paris to let it be in charge of other projects in France in these questions of mobility, sustainable mobility, and urbanism and all what we have developed on the Grand Paris Express. So in 2023, we had a new law which transformed the Société des Grands Paris into Société des Grands Projets and gave the possibility to our society, to our company, to develop other projects outside Paris and outside the central region in France. So we are involved now in other projects, and I can speak about it if you like. So what was at the beginning the Société du Grand Paris? It was, as I told you, to design and build the Grand Paris Express, and also to conduct the urban development and the real estate project around the station of the Grand Paris Express. We have also to say that the Société des Grands Projets had a very special and very interesting financial model, because we are, I just develop it now, we have the possibility of deal on our own with the long-term financing of the project. We are allowed, I perhaps have to precise firstly that as the juridical form of the Société des Grands Projets, we are a public company, I should say, and allowed to fund the Grand Paris Express project with in issuing some long-term, medium and long-term bonds by our own, which is very rare in the French system. Usually, only the state and some very rare exceptions are allowed to do that by themselves. The Société des Grands Projets is allowed to do that, and we did that. So we have issued around 28 billion euros in green bonds since the beginning, what means that we are able to finance by ourselves all the operations which are necessary to build the Grand Paris Express. I told you that we were transformed in Société des Grands Projets. That means that today we are involved in 14 different projects in different towns in France, in East, North, and so on. That's the beginning, but in front of the need of developing sustainable solutions, decarbonized public transportation model in the main big cities in France, the Société des Grands Projets has an offer, which is the offer we built in the Grand Paris Express, and we are involved, as I said, in 14 projects at this time, perhaps 18 in a few months. Perhaps some words about our organization. That is not a surprise, but the Grand Paris Express is built on a matrix model. That means matrix organization. That means that we have divided the project into the different lines, which means that we have some project drivers, project chiefs for each one of our 4 lines. And that is the horizontal part of the organization. And for the vertical part, we have some resources and departments which are organizing the different competencies which are given to the project leaders line by line. Today we have a bit more than 1,000 employees. Perhaps is it interesting to precise that it has not always been the case, and during a long time, around until 2017, we were capped by the state in our recruitments and the number of employees we could have. This has been changed in 2018, and we grow from 250 in 4 years to around 1,000. It was not easy because it's not simple to build an organization and to build a common culture with such rapid growing. But my predecessor, the previous CEO, made that, and I profit of it now. What is also very important is the evolution and adaptation ability for a project company as we are. I told you that we had very strong and rapid growing in our number of employees, but we had also to deal with a lot of evolutions in the organization, in the structure, in the way of functioning. And we are perhaps today also going to make some other very important structural evolutions, because what is absolutely evident is that such an organization has to evolve with the project. That means at the beginning, when we are in the conception phasing, we need some types of people, some sort of organization, some process, and so on. But when we start the building itself, when we start the relationships with the population, because the work sites are make emerge a lot of problems with the populations, with the neighborhood, with the local authorities. It is a new phases, and after that, when we have finished the building phase, we have to deal with the phase of the testing of the new network, of the new system, and so on. So at each phase of the project, we have to change our organization firstly, but also our way of thinking and our culture and our process. I told you about the fact that we have also urban functions around the stations of the Grand Paris Express. We have two things to do. The first one is to deal with the properties we had to buy to build our stations. When we have finished the station, there is some place left on which we are going to build some housing or some buildings. So when we do that, we have at the end of the day a lot of properties, and we have a lot of work to build something which has interesting meaning around the stations, and which is also according with the ideas of the local authorities. So on our own properties, we have a role in real estate. But we have also that on the whole surrounding of the stations, because we are in charge also of what is just around the station and concerns the way for people to enter the station, but also the intermodality, the way in which the buses, the bikes, the pedestrians, and so on are able to join the station. And after that, we have also, with our real estate, a role to play in the new urbanism which is made around the station. All that means that on each one of our 68 stations, we have to deal with a very strong, very intense dialogue with local authorities, with the state itself, and with all the people and organizations which are involved in the urban evolutions around the stations. That means that we join at the end what was the first sentence of the law I told you just at the beginning. The Grand Paris is a urban project. We have at the end to build the network to make that the train are able to transport people, but also we have to deal with all the what is evaluating around the stations and at the end on the whole region of Paris. That is what is written in this slide. We have 1 million of square meters of new housing or other places in our real estate. That means 100 projects which are developed around the stations between now and 2030. As you can imagine, we have in this field a very high ambition about environment matters. I can develop it if you like, but we developed a lot of links with some organizations which deal with that. We have special techniques to develop our real estate project and so on and so on. We fixed a lot of strong ambitions about that. And it is always needed to have a strong innovation program to deal with all these matters. So we have some people which are who are devoted to this question of innovation in construction. I told you about our environmental ambition. As you can imagine, it has also to deal with the environmental ambition during the construction, the building phases. When you build an underground network, the first thing is that you have to use a lot of concrete. And when it is such a mega project, each small improvement that you make on, for example, the concrete techniques, reusing or low carbon fabrication system, and so on. Each one you make a small improvement on that, small progress. When it is developed on a mega project as the Grand Paris Express, it has a lot of influence on the sector itself. So we have developed some methods to make emergence of innovative solutions. We have some space dedicated to it, and so on. Some words about the new developments of the Société des Grands Projets. As I told you, a new law in 2023 gave us the possibility of use our competencies and experiences on other projects in the country. As you can imagine, it was very complicated to achieve this evolution for the Société des Grands Projets. But we are starting this new adventure with some regions in France, with what we share with the SNCF, the French railway company, and I think that we have a lot of things to invent and a lot of innovation to do about these questions. Some examples: we are very strongly involved in the Service Express Régional Métropolitain. It's what how we call the public transportation network on a large basis and the daily transportation network. So the first one we dealt with was the one of Hauts-de-France in the north of France, around Lille. To give an example, I just understand that I forgot to give you some figures about the cost of the Grand Paris Express, which is in 2012 euros, which is 36.1 billion euros. But to give you an example about the CERM Hauts-de-France, it could be a project costing around 10 billion euros. That means that's something very important with new railway lines, with new stations in Lille itself. The central station in Lille will be rebuilt. We will build 4, 5, 6 new stations on the new railway line. But it's not only railway; it's also special busing, other transportation modes, etc. We have also that's a map which is explaining what we are going to do in Lille. The same in Grand Est, around Strasbourg, for example. As I told you, for Lille, we are going to develop new using of the existing lines, new service ambitions, and the whole planning for improving the public transportation in this area. I conclude with the fact that we are absolutely sure that the sector in which we are working is very important for the future. It has to deal, as I told you, with sustainable development, with energetical transition, but also with excellency in some new techniques, with a more balanced sociological urbanism, and with all these matters which are so important for everybody now. Place to the question and answers.
Fantastic. Thanks very much indeed for a wonderful presentation. I'll have the hard time of combining several questions that we are receiving here, but there seems to be a common interest in this transformation of the organization from delivering the Grand Paris Express and now an organization delivering projects across the entire country. So we're interested very much on how you approached this expansion of the organization and perhaps the rationale behind the vision. So why? Who had the idea of transforming this organization in a national endeavor to cover multiple projects across France?
Okay. Perhaps I start with the second question. Who had the idea? I think I can say that each one who is arriving in charge of the Société du Grand Paris has the idea after a few months, because and all the previous CEO of the Société Grand Paris had this idea for some reasons which are very easy to understand. The first one is that when you manage such a company, it's not very easy to explain to your employees that if they manage, they are out, they are fired. If you manage, the company has no more use, so goodbye. It's understandable. When you recruit someone in the Société Grand Paris, you tell him, but we are dealing with a project, and when the project is finished, the Société du Grand Paris is finished. But at the end, when you are working on that and you are approaching from the end of the project, you have a lot of questions. What am I going to do after that? And so on. So for the intern management of the Société du Grand Paris, that was a question from the very beginning. More important, the fact that we built a company which does not exist at all in France before that. Because such a mega project, we had not such a mega project before the Grand Paris Express in these years. And because the ideas in 2010, when the company was built, of mixing in just one company all the competencies to build the metro, build the system, organize the urbanism, develop real estate, develop the relationships with the local authorities, etc., were very interesting ideas. And if I may say so, I'm not sure it's the good expression in English, but it was a sort of missing link between a lot of things that we had in France, as in UK and other countries, but which are nowadays very, very important. I give you just some examples. When you build a new network, you have to buy private properties, for example. You have to deal with environmental constraints, and that's very good. For example, when you are building a station in a place where you had a forest or a lake or something like that, there is biodiversity that you have to preserve, and there are some laws and some constraints. And so when you do that, you have also to understand what will be the urban development on this question. If you deal with each one of these matters separately, that's very complicated to drive the project. The fact that we mixed all these competencies in the Société du Grand Paris at the origin was very interesting. So when I arrived in charge, like my predecessors, I just made the constat. I just understood that should be a pity to let these mixed competencies be, how we could say, dispersed, be splitted and disappear. So I'm sure that we developed a common competence and a common culture, which is very useful in some projects. That's the second part of the idea. Some projects which exist, but that we are not in France able to develop. I gave you the example of the Service Express Régional Métropolitain des Hauts-de-France, the new network around Lille. The project exists since perhaps 10 or 12 years. We had already a public debate in 2015, but since that, it did not progress. I'm not saying that from the moment the Société des Grands Projets arrived, everything is solved. That's not the case. But the fact that we arrive give a new impulsion, which proves that this structure is useful. That was the second part of your question. The first one is how we do that. There is, at the beginning of the Société du Grand Paris, one bet, which is this society is going to build at the same time 4 new lines. If I give another example that you know, I know that you heard the CEO of Crossrail. Crossrail is one line, absolutely incredible in complexity, because that was a link between 2 existing lines and so on. That was very, very complex, but one line. That means that you have the project, you were able to transform your company, Crossrail, at the same time as the project. The bet for the Société du Grand Paris, and furthermore for the Société des Grands Projets, is that we are dealing with 4, perhaps 5, and perhaps 10 or 15 different projects at different levels of development. That means, for example, that the first line that we are going to commission, which is the 15 south after the 14, this line is about the 2 last years now. So it's not the same way of driving it. The CERM Hauts-de-France is at the very beginning of the very starting of the conception. So we have to get involved in the same Société des Grands Projets, some people which are dealing with some different projects at very different levels. So I have to say that dealing with this transformation is very, very tough job. It's very complicated. I told you about the fact that we were 1,000 employees. That's a first, that's the beginning of an answer to say that I'm sure that more than 1,000 should be impossible, because the first quality that we have to get is agility. We have to adapt ourselves to different situations in different part of the country tomorrow, but to use for that the common culture that we have built on the Grand Paris Express.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for the comprehensive answer there. We have one follow-up on that across the evolution of the organization. There was one point in your presentation that you mentioned you were capped in 250 employees, and that seems to be very common in many special purpose entities created for the delivery of mega projects globally. So government often imposes that restriction. So the question is, the law allowed you to change that number from 250 to 1,000, or it was something else on the vision and the process of building this new organization and the capability that you needed for the Grand Paris Express and the lines that you described? So 4 lines, different stages of the project in different line, and the capability that you needed internally would need to grow to different levels of complexity internally to manage the complexity of the program. So questions around how you managed to convince government to grow from 250 to 1,000 in the capability building process.
Excellent question, Giuliano, which is one of our important matters that we have to deal with, and especially me. I start with saying that from my point of view as a CEO, the Grand Paris Express and the Société des Grands Projets after that are political matters. It has firstly to deal with political questions. When you speak about public transportation, you have to deal with public money. It's impossible to let the private initiative do that. It does not exist anywhere. So that means that if you want to develop new networks, it is a political decision. It needs the political force of a public governmental project, not only for the funding question, but also because you have to get some public privileges, for example, to acquire or buy or expropriate to get the private properties that you need to build your network. So that means that when you are at the head of such a company, I should say half of your role is to deal with political questions. I don't think that it is an horrid constraint or something that I have to avoid as much as possible. That's not true. It's normal that the political put his eye on such project because it pays, and it is political decision. So I have no better answer than this one. It is a day-to-day work to convince the political structure that you need some other means, that you use the means which are given to you in the good way, that you are not going to use not properly, etc., etc. That means, for example, to give once more concrete examples, that I meet the Secretary of State or minister level at least once a month. Either the ministry himself or the cabinet leader or the staff, the chief of staff of the ministry. I have, for example, in 1 week, a meeting with the chief of staff of the prime minister to explain what we are going to do with the Service Express Régionaux Métropolitains, to explain some things about the Grand Paris Express, and so on and so on. That is for the governmental level. The same for the local authorities level. I was in the office of the president of the region, Île-de-France, last week, 4 days ago, to explain what were the problems, what were the problems on the Grand Paris Express, and so on and so on. So that means that we have to discuss day to day with the political authorities. And how we do that? By using all the means of this sort of discussions. And for example, by, yes, perhaps I can add that. For example, we have a huge reflection about the form and the intensity of the transparency of what we give to our governance, our authorities. And we are just now, this week or these 2 or 3 next weeks, building a new report, reporting, sorry, a new reporting, very complete, very intense. And I spend a lot of time with my teams to design, build, organize the reporting that we made each 3 months. We have an intense reflection about the question of what we are going to give it public or to just give to our authorities, because it is a part of our permanent dialogue with political authorities. And just to finish about that, we just I had the decision just 10 days ago to make public our reporting each 3 months, which is a very new decision, because usually you give that to the ministry, and only few people involved in the project. We decided to put it on our website. All the information that we get about the advancing of the project are given on our website. So each one of you will be able to see where is the tunnel boring machine on the 18 line, where is the contract with X and Y company on the 14 line, etc., etc. And if we do that, it's not only because we think that transparency is something good in itself, it's because it is a part of the dialogue we have with our authorities, which permit us to explain to them what we are going to do in other parts of the country, etc., etc.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have several questions here around procurement and how you dealt with the supply chain, how you established the relationships with tier 1 organizations. And I guess that is partially connected with what capabilities you maintained in-house at the client organization, and what capabilities you are allowing the supply chain to have, essentially. So the question is more on how did you procure the design and construction of several lines? Is there a standard approach, the same approach to all 4 lines? Did that influence your process internally on the functions, the oversight, the coordination that you maintain, or it's different for different lines and different complexity levels?
Firstly, I think it's impossible to have exactly the same organization on each line. For example, we decided to change our contracting model. I'm not sure I'm using the good word, but you have some different sort of contracts about those sort of projects. You know that by mixing the engineering with the building or separating it. And in the French system, the law is different depending on the type of contract you have. And to say it short, the main difference if you split your contracts with all the companies that you need to build the project, if you split it into a lot of different contracts or if you mix it in what we call conception building model or conception building contract, in which you give to just one group the whole conception and building. So we had we have the 2 models. For example, for I told you about the 15 South, but the rest of the 15 line will be built on another contract model, which is this conception building contract model. So that means that the organization is not the same, the supply chain is not the same, the control that we made on the contract management is not the same, and so on and so on. So it's different on each line. We have some guidelines, that's sure, because we try to, but it's because firstly we try to how I can say retour sur expérience, use our experience, feedback. Yes, it's the question of feedback, precisely. So our guidelines are the result of our feedback. We managed to do that this way. It worked not so good, so we use it to put it on the other line. That's one of the benefits of being in charge of different lines which are at different level of development. So we try to transpose what we did well on one line to the other one. Perhaps one word more about what you asked about the supply chain and the procurement. I should ask the question in another way, which is how can we anticipate? Because what is absolutely sure is that if you raise the question of the supply chain at the beginning of the building, it's too late. And what is very difficult is to anticipate the fact that in 3 years after the boring of the tunnel, you will need those sort of competencies. We have at this time around 8,000 people working on our work sites. That was not completely evident to find 8,000 people working on these sites. So we dealt some years ago with work organization, with a lot of people which were able to comment on dit former, train people to be able to be in charge of our work site at the good moment. I must add that we have also difficulties, numerous difficulties about this question when we arrive in these phases of system and tests, which involve very rare competencies, rare in Europe, people who are able to manage a system and IT to make a new network function in automatism are very rare. So we tried to anticipate that. We did it not so bad, but it could have been better.
Excellent. We have plenty of questions here, but I'm recognizing the time, of course, and we don't want to overstep our 1 hour slot. So perhaps I would like to invite your closing remarks and potentially with the questions of what lessons from Grand Prix Express and the company that's now in charge of or available to be in charge of several projects across the country, what lessons from your experience, both the project and the company more broadly, what lessons would you like to see replicated or implemented in other mega projects around the world?
It's a very difficult question. I should say, just to be short, that as far as I am personally concerned as a CEO, the main question is to be sufficiently lucid. I'm going to find a word. Just give me 1 second. But aware to understand at any time if I am not in the good position in this sort of galaxy of people, organization, which are surrounding the company and which whom I have to deal with. I explain. I have my employees, I have the ministers, I have the political authorities, I have the local authorities, I have the companies which are working for the project, I have the engineers, the engineering companies, etc., etc. I have always to think. I have no better word than a planet in a galaxy. If I am too close to the political part, I will be too far from the companies, and the contrary. So, am I sure at each second of my professional life that I am in the good position? And to get that, I am always thinking of the next step, as everyone in this sort of position. And the next step understood as what is my place in the game. For example, well, no, too much example, but I often see that as a game, not like chess, but more like Go. You have your position here, you are placed here, you are developing your territory here, you are dealing with this problem there. Are you sure that at any time you are not getting too close to one part? Because it will put you too far from another. So sometimes you feel that you are very well in your relationship with the companies. Danger. Not too well. Because the political part is going to think that you are too close to the companies. I had this reflection sometimes. So it's incredible, but it's like that. And the contrary is also true. So this question of comprehension at any time of where you are you well placed, is essential.
Brilliant. Jean-François, thanks very much indeed for your wonderful presentation, for sharing such a comprehensive view of the organization, the evolution, and in particular for being so honest and sharing your personal reflections as a CEO to close this wonderful time with us today. So once again, we appreciate you making the time to share lessons from this magnificent project that I'm looking forward to visit. And to all of you online. We'll get back to you over the next days or so, and until the next time that we meet for the CEO series. Thanks for joining.